Good afternoon. My name is Damion Killsback from the Northern Cheyenne Nation of Montana. I am an enrolled member of the Northern Cheyenne tribe. I'm here to talk about Native American hunting techniques and the history of hunting as part of the Native American lifestyle and the way of life.
Damion, where have you hunted?
Well, I started hunting back home in Montana, the Northern Cheyenne Indian Reservation. Mostly just deer hunting with my uncles and some of my cousins and my brothers, some friends. Deer hunting for sustenance. I wasn't really a trophy hunter. We would always be asked to hunt either for like our grandmothers or our grandfathers, so our aunts, or people that didn't have the means to, to obtain venison or any type of elk meat or anything like that.
Have you hunted anywhere else?
Yeah, I have actually hunted. Of course, other places in Montana. I've hunted in the Southwest in New Mexico with the Hickory Apache tribe, who have a really nice trophy areas to hunt mule deer, elk, and antelope.
And I see you have some items over here. Can you give us an explanation of what these are and how you've acquired them?
Okay, well, this one right here, these are elk antlers. This is from my archery hunt back in Montana, just south of our Northern Cheyenne Reservation. It's a 7x7 Rocky Mountain elk, taken with archery tackle. And it's from the state of Montana's Montana Fish, Wildlife and Park.
So when you say archery tackle, what exactly do you mean?
So archery tackle is just a term used for like bow and arrow. In this case, a compound bow with a carbon fiber shaft with a mechanical broadhead for cutting. And that's what we mean by with everything that goes with that, like a mechanical release that helps you adhere to what they call a D loop to the string when you pull back on a bow. And of course, there's other things that goes into archery hunting. There's you have to have like good optics, like binoculars, to actually spot and find your animals, find the game. Camouflage is a big part of that, so to kind of break up your outline, so to speak, when you're so animals can't really detect your human form when you're out hunting or hiking around out there in the wilderness.
And so these other items?
Okay, so these are just these are whitetail antlers. These are are still used today to rattle or to call in like bucks during the buck deer. Use your whitetail. You can actually rattle in some mule deer, but mostly whitetails are what they use to rattle antlers.
And what does that rattling? What is that? How does that attract them?
Well, whitetails around the rut are really territorial and they're pretty curious. So if they hear the rattling of antlers, that means that there's a whitetails are trying to establish dominance for a specific area, so they can breed the does within the area. So that's what that means. That usually will spark the interest of another buck within the area, maybe a bigger buck, to kind of see if there's other bucks encroaching on their territory and trying to breed the does within his range.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we're back with Damion Killsback. Damion, can you explain to us a little bit about the Native American nomadic lifestyle?
Okay, sure. So Native Americans, before the Spanish brought horses over, were mainly main means of transportation, of course, were on foot. So they pursued game and hunted animals on foot. The most common types of animals, before horses were brought over, of course, were your elk, your deer, but mainly the Great Plains area had buffalo. Buffalo hunting was the main form of obtaining meat and any other resources for tribes, mainly the Great Plains tribes, because they're nomadic in nature, and they used everything of the buffalo, you know, from the hide down to the hooves to the back, you know, to the large bones, to the you know, even to the stomach, to actually use as water containers. After they cleaned them out, they used the stomach for water containers to carry water. And they're actually used in ceremony too. Buffalo skulls were used in ceremony when they did their fasting, their sun dances. The buffalo robes were actually used for you know, teepees, covering of teepees, and they're also used for you know, heavy robes for the winter times. Some of the warrior societies would use that buffalo robe and actually write, you know, do artwork on it on the inside of a buffalo using various paints and inks from plants and clays and dried dirt to tell stories of like battles or any types of hunts, any type of creation stories are used on the inside of the buffalo hides.
Okay, so besides food, were there any other factors in the nomadic, why Native Americans were nomadic? Whether it was, you know, with winter camps, summer camps. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, tribes were nomadic because they followed the buffalo herds. That was our main source of subsistence. But not all tribes were Great Plains and nomadic tribes. There were a lot of tribes that had permanent, semi-permanent homes that were like Hogans, like in the southwest, and then they had like long wood houses out in the the northwest or in the northeast. Eastern part of the like you talk about the civilized tribes of the Iroquois and the Algonquins, bigger Algonquin tribes. And they usually hunted in deep forests and mostly deer and elk. They also fished as well, so they that was their main source of subsistence. It was venison, whitetail, and they had elk out here. Elk is usually more widespread than it is today. Most of the elk that's out east right now has been transported from the west. From some of the larger larger herds, like the Rocky Mountain herds from Colorado and Montana, have, you know, been transported to Pennsylvania, to like West Virginia.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about. Can you explain some hunting techniques before the arrival of the horse?
Okay. So the most common one, which is still used today, is the spot and stalk technique, where you spot animals and you try to stalk them, you know, when they're either sedentary, like they're bedding down and for the day, because most animals, even deer, elk, are nocturnal. They usually feed out during the night or early in the morning when it's really dark, and they rest during the day. Usually that's most animals have that nocturnal behavior. So most hunts will usually occur like early in the morning or in the evening time, and from either at dusk or at dawn. So they'll, you know, they would try to spot animals before they go to their beds, and when they bed down, so you put a stalk on an animal, and then try to harvest that animal that way. The other technique, which is really widely used for the Plains tribes, was the driving herds of buffalo off of a cliff or a buffalo jump, and at the bottom would be, you know, some of the hunting party, usually the younger warriors, would be at the bottom to you know, to finish off the wounded in the main buffalo. Usually the fastest hunters and warriors would be the ones that drive the buffalo into certain areas so they could go off a cliff. So that was the most common way before the Spanish and the Europeans brought horses over, was to drive buffalo off of cliffs. They also used that technique for some of the other plains animals, like the antelope, the pronghorn. They used to build mounds, try to funnel the antelopes into these really narrow pinpoints, and then they would ambush them that way, and they run into like you know, large sand pits or you know, swampy water, and then they would ambush them that way. But of course, back in the day, you know, back in those days, the hunters are really lean, and they're really had a lot of endurance and stamina compared to what we are today. They're really fast. I remember some of my uncles and some of the people, the elders from my tribe, used to tell me about the antelope hunts, and it just blew me away, like how natives were so, you know, the ultimate predator, you know, even without the use of what we have today with like rifles and these super fast compound bows that can shoot, you know, 350 feet per second. You know, they had these really primitive weapons. They were still able to be such a skilled hunter. They were able to harvest these animals that were super fast, and it was just survival of the fittest. And this is something that I'm still kind of in awe about when I think about it.
So you've earlier explained about a compound bow. Can you explain a little bit about the bow and arrow of the past, pre-compound bow? Okay,
so most bows were usually made out of willow branches or some type of semi-flexible wood, and the shafts, the arrows, were actually made out of like cedar branches, and they were actually they used to heat the cedar to straighten it out, and they would fletch the arrows with like turkey feathers or any other type, and wrap them sinew on each side. And they would flint knap the broadheads and fix them to the front of the arrow. So it was a really primitive weapon, because and then even the string on the bow was typically used from the like the backstrap sinew of a buffalo, or you know, a large animal like an elk, and that was the bowstring that they used.
For the viewers that don't know, can you explain what sinew is?
So sinew is like the long kind of stringy fiber that is because the largest muscles on animals, like the ungulates, what they call them, the cloven hoof, is going to be the back muscle, which runs the length from their back of their skull all the way to their tailbone. So that's how they get this. They strip that sinew off once they butcher the animal. Take the backstrap muscle, the big back muscle off the animal, and they take that sinew off, and this comes off in strands, and they let it dry. And when it dries, they usually braid it into to strengthen the string, and they use that to string their bows with.
Interesting, very interesting. Okay, and do you want to say anything else about the ambush techniques?
Okay, so I said spawn and stalk earlier, so that's the technique we kind of use today. Out west, western big game hunting, that's the techniques I use when I bow hunt. Even rifle hunting, we spot animals first, and then we try to put a stalk on them to get closer and close the distance, then to harvest them. The other methods, like in thick woods where you know there's deer, is you can actually set up a tree stand out here. I think out east, that's the predominant way I think the only way you can legally bow hunt now out here is from a tree stand, from an elevated position, or a ground blind. There's usually more tree stand hunters out here where you sit in a tree stand from an elevated position, and it's usually around a game trail where deer are known to to migrate to and from either a bedded area to food source, or to a water source, or to a breeding ground, which could be seasonal. So usually those types of techniques are used for whitetail hunting out here. But I have seen tree stands hunting and ground blind hunting used for techniques for taking and harvesting, Rocky Mountain elk. Like private ranches, they'll have ground blinds and some tree stands, because it's some of these well-established trails. You're bound to, if you sit there long enough, especially when it's hot like this, close to archery season, when it's late September, still hot, you're still going to get animals that go frequent those trails. So you have a good chance of harvesting an animal that way. And then also the other technique is a drive, like going back to the pre-horse culture of American Indian and Alaska Native lifestyle. That was the most commonly used way to harvest a lot of animals without with a large group of people, is to drive them off a cliff called a buffalo jump. They still do that. They still do drives today. With deer drives, people will form a line of folks, a couple 20-30 yards apart from each other, and they walk through thick heavy timber, trying to flush deer out to another hunter that's maybe waiting on the other side of the forest or the stand of timber, and that's the deer drive. And they also do that as well. Pheasant hunters, any type of upland game bird hunters will do that as well. They'll flush bird and game animals through thickets and brush, and then that's how they do drives like that through large fields.
Okay, so moving on, can you tell us about how, if there were any changes in hunting techniques after the arrival of the horse to the Americas?
Okay, so when the horses are brought over, it really did help, I think, with hunting with a lot of the plains tribes, because they were able to a lot easier to scout and to track animals, especially large animals like buffalo herds and elk herds. So instead of like taking days and maybe even weeks to catch up to a herd, you know, it was a matter of maybe a half a day to, you know, a couple hours where they could, you know, get on the trail of a huge herd of buffalo and try to, you know, follow the herd. And then even today with horses, mostly used for like getting into the backcountry where it's really tough to get to. People can get like, you know, do backcountry hunts with a guide and get horses, and then they can get to the backcountry, you know, and hunt for like, you know, 7 to, you know, 14 days and hunt comfortably with horses packing their, you know, their whole camp, you know, with wall tents, stoves, any type of supplies. And on the way back, when they actually harvest animals like an elk, they'll have the horse to actually, you know, pack the elk's meat and the antlers out for them, as opposed to like, you know, having to do that all on your back on the frame pack. So horse hunting is definitely, horses have definitely are really a really good benefit to hunting overall. Not necessarily, I don't see a lot of people actually hunting from horseback. It's not like you're hunting like in England and chasing foxes around and stuff like that. So it's a little different out west. It's more of a utility as opposed to actually using it as a direct method of hunting.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Damion, well, thank you very much for talking to us today. As a native hunter, is there anything else that you'd like to let us know?
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, I think one of the most important things I've learned growing up and being a native hunter is to always have respect for the animals and the game that you're pursuing. Not only that, you know, is you're hunting for food. That's the main reason you're hunting. You're hunting to provide sustenance to either yourself or someone that you care for, a family member. So when I go out and hunt, I used to hunt for my wife's grandmother quite a bit, and the most important thing to me was to make sure that I only took what I needed from the earth, from the land. You know, there's a few times I came into a huge deer, you know, herd, a large number of deer. I mean, so many deer I could count. I could never count in my hand, but I only needed one. I only needed one deer, and I only took one deer because I knew that there are other hunters out there that are hunting for their families or for themselves, and why would I need to take more than I needed and more than what the person needed when I hunted? And there are times where some of my friends who were more concerned about antlers and wanted to trophy hunt if they knew I was going hunting. But most of the times, you know, when you're out hunting, it's hard to find a big animal unless you're like on a game farm or private land that is really designed to grow animals with big antlers to get that trophy size. And it's rare on public land, even sometimes on reservation land, to find big animals like that. So I've been blessed to take a few animals that were big, you know, but most of the time I'm out hunting, all the time I'm out hunting, I'm mostly looking to harvest an animal to provide food and meat to my family or to my loved ones. The other thing with being a native hunter is the true reason you're out there to hunt is to provide food, but also to be respectful of the animal and the land that you're hunting on and the animals that you're actually hunting and pursuing. And make sure they have a clean, swift death. You know, you don't want to ever see animals suffer. Don't ever take questionable shots. You know, there's no reason for you to take, you know, a 300-400 yard shot with a rifle if you've never shot in that far, or accurate or consistent at shooting at those ranges. With a bow, you know, there's no need for you to take a shot at an animal at 70-80 yards if you've never practiced that far. So it's always being within your shoot within in the range that you're consistent with and that you're safe with and accurate with, where you can cleanly take an animal. Because the last thing you want is to have an animal suffer, to have a painful death. Because what you want to do is, the animal is giving its life for you and your family, and make sure that you take it in a respectful manner, because he's giving his life to you so that you can give that meat and that sustenance to your family, so you can carry on life as well. Because as natives, we go back to the land as well, and as natives, we understand that we're connected to the animals and to the land. It is very difficult for to stalk an animal and to take animals when they know you're not there. And that's one of the things that I pride myself on, is the animals I've harvested were taken cleanly. Some of them didn't even know I was there. You know, they you know, when I took the final shot, you know, they only took a few steps, and then they passed away. They expired. I can speak about like antelope hunting is one of the game animals that people don't like to hunt antelope, because they think they don't taste very well. They don't think they taste very good, but they do taste very good. They're very delicious tasting animal, but it's how you harvest that animal what makes a difference in how they taste. The antelope I've taken, you know, I've actually crawled 2 football fields. I crawled over 200 yards to get a shot on an antelope. And when I harvested the antelope, he didn't know I was there. He stood up, and when I shot him, he died instantly. And it was one of the best hunts I've ever been on. I had a few friends with me, and I took it to my grandmother, my wife's grandmother, you know, for her to, you know, consume. She couldn't believe it was an animal. She thought it was a white-tailed doe, which is really, you know, one of the most desirable animals to eat is a white-tailed doe. When I told her it was an antelope, she was surprised, because all the animals she had experience with were not very, you know, pleasant tasting because of how they were harvested. You know, antelope, when they run and they get scared, they get adrenaline in their blood. They don't taste very well. They don't taste very good. They taste really gamey. Kind of likened to like, you know, bulls that are, you know, in bullfights with matadors, and they're so full of testosterone, hormones, and adrenaline. They get that meat from the bull that was slaughtered from the bullfight, and they give it to the homeless. They give it to the poor, because the meat doesn't taste good. It's not a desirable, you know, way to eat an animal that's been, you know, under stress. You know, has a lot of adrenaline. Has not been, you know, harvested in a respectful, peaceful manner. So that's all I'll have to say about, I guess, harvesting animals and being respectful as a native hunter. And I hope all hunters are that as well. You know, I've talked to non-native hunters about harvesting animals. You know, is to make sure they take them ethically, cleanly. That's one of the things that I, you know, with compound bows, the past three elk I've harvested with a compound bow have all been, you know, clean pass-through shots. That means the arrows have gone all the way through the vitals of the elk and passed completely through. So that to me is a good, clean, ethical shot, because, you know, the animal will bleed out quickly, and if I don't, you know, put any more stress on the animal, he'll die quickly and cleanly, and the meat will taste good, and he'll, you know, make myself, I'll feel a lot better about that as a hunter, that I, you know, was an ethical hunter, and the animal was, you know, went in a peaceful way.
All right. Well, thank you very much for educating us today. Damion Killsback of the Northern Cheyenne Tribe of Montana. Thank you very much for joining us today.